The wind screamed like a living thing, and Elena Morrison understood with perfect clarity that she was going to die out here. Her swollen belly pressed against ribs that ached with every gasping breath. 9 months pregnant, alone, and the snow had already stolen the feeling from her feet. Each step forward required a negotiation with her body, a promise she knew she couldn't keep. Just one more, just 10 more. Just make it to those trees. The baby kicked, hard, a tiny foot or fist jamming into her bladder with enough force to make her stumble. Lena caught herself against a snow-covered boulder, her bare hands screaming at the contact with ice. The gloves had gone somewhere in the first hour. Or was it the second? Time had lost meaning when every moment became about survival. Behind her, maybe 3 miles back through the mountain pass, her cabin was ash. The smell of burning wood still clung to her hair, mixed with something else. Something that made her stomach turn even now. They had used kerosene. She had smelled it when the first bottle shattered through her kitchen window. The flame catching on the curtains she'd sewn herself during the long autumn evenings while waiting for David to return from the Copper Creek mining claims. Victor Kane's face swam in her memory, the scar cutting across his left cheek, pale as a new moon against weathered skin. Those eyes like chips of dirty ice. Your husband owes me money, Mrs. Morrison. $3,000 from a poker game in Denver before you two even met. Now, I'm a patient man, but my patience has a price. The man beside Victor had laughed. Owen Garrett, with his crooked teeth and hands that moved too fast. She had seen those hands before, felt them. Elena forced the memory down, concentrating instead on putting one foot in front of the other. The baby kicked again, lower this time. A contraction, maybe. Too early, still 3 weeks before her due date by the doctor's reckoning. But her body had stopped following anyone's schedule the moment she'd run into the snow. The trees ahead wavered in her vision. Douglas firs, their branches heavy with accumulated snow. If she could reach them, she might find shelter. Might be able to start a fire with the matches in her coat pocket. If the matches were still dry, if her hands could still grip them. If. Her legs gave out. No warning. Just the sudden absence of strength, her knees folding like paper. And then she was falling forward into powder that exploded around her in a white cloud. The cold hit her face like a slap. For a moment, she just lay there, her cheek against the snow, and thought about how easy it would be to close her eyes, to let the cold take her. At least then the pain would stop. The baby kicked again, frantic this time, as if the child inside her could sense the danger, could feel her mother's will faltering. No, Elena pushed herself up on her elbows. The baby didn't ask to be born into this. Didn't ask for Owen Garrett's violence or Victor Kane's greed or a father who might be dead in a hospital bed 300 miles away in Denver. This child deserved a chance. She got one hand under her, then the other. Her arms shook so badly she could barely support her own weight. Another contraction rippled through her abdomen, stealing her breath. Definitely contractions now. The baby was coming, whether Elena was ready or not. Through the haze of pain and exhaustion, she became aware of a new sound. Not the wind, something heavier, rhythmic. Footsteps crunching through snow. Air shot through her like electricity. They had followed her. Victor's men. Of course they had. She was pregnant and slow and leaving a trail a child could follow. Owen Garrett was probably already raising his rifle, sighting down on her helpless form. The footsteps grew closer. Elena tried to crawl, managed maybe 2 feet before another contraction locked her muscles. She bit down on her lip hard enough to taste blood, refusing to cry out, refusing to give them the satisfaction. A shadow fell across the snow in front of her. Marcus Webb had been checking his trap line when he saw the dark shape against the white expanse below. From a distance, it looked like a wounded deer, the way it moved in fits and starts, staggering and falling. But as he descended the rocky slope with the practiced ease of a man who'd walked these mountains for 17 years, he realized it was human. A woman. And from the way she moved, the curve of her body, even under the heavy coat, very pregnant. He moved faster, not running because running in deep snow was a good way to break an ankle, but with the efficient ground-eating stride he'd developed during his years in the Rangers. Before Afghanistan, before everything went to hell, and he'd climbed up here to get away from the world and its endless capacity for violence. The woman collapsed again when he was maybe 50 yards away. Didn't get up this time, just lay there in the snow, her body shaking. Marcus reached her side and dropped to one knee. Up close, he could see she was young, maybe late 20s, with dark hair that had come loose from its braid. Her lips had gone blue. Her breathing was shallow and rapid. Hypothermia, advanced stage. And those tremors running through her body weren't just from cold. She was in labor. The woman's eyes fluttered open when he touched her shoulder. Brown eyes, wide with fear, focusing on his face with difficulty. Please. Her voice barely a whisper. Please don't. Marcus realized what she must be thinking, a stranger appearing out of nowhere in the middle of a blizzard. He kept his voice level, calm, the same tone he'd used to talk down panicked soldiers in firefights halfway around the world. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to help you. My cabin's about 4 miles north. Can you walk? She tried to push herself up and failed, her arms giving out. A sound escaped her throat, something between a tuni and a moan, the sound of someone who had reached the absolute end of their endurance. My baby. The words came out broken. Please, my baby. Marcus made his decision in the space of a heartbeat. He shrugged out of his heavy coat and wrapped it around her shivering form, then scooped her up in his arms. She weighed almost nothing despite the pregnancy. How long had she been out here? How far had she come? You're safe now, Marcus started walking, adjusting his grip to keep her steady. Both of you are safe, I promise. The woman's eyes searched his face, looking for the lie, the trap. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she sagged against his chest and closed her eyes. Within moments, her breathing had slowed. Not sleep, unconsciousness, her body shutting down non-essential functions to preserve what little warmth remained. Marcus picked up his pace as much as he dared. 4 miles through terrain he knew by heart, but never under these circumstances. Never carrying someone whose life depended on him reaching shelter before her body gave out completely. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd spent 17 years hiding from exactly this kind of responsibility, this kind of connection. And now here he was, holding a stranger and her unborn child, their survival resting entirely on his shoulders. The blizzard intensified as he climbed higher. Wind-driven snow reduced visibility to maybe 10 feet. Marcus navigated by memory and instinct, following landmarks invisible to anyone else. That lightning-struck pine, the boulder shaped like a crouching bear, the frozen stream that marked the halfway point. The woman stirred in his arms as he crossed the stream, her body going rigid. A contraction. He could feel it through the layers of clothing, her muscles clenching. She bit back a cry, her teeth clenched so hard he heard them grind. How long between contractions? Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure she could hear him over the wind. Her eyes opened, closer, every few minutes now. Not good. If she went into active labor before they reached the cabin, in this cold, the baby wouldn't survive. Might not survive anyway. Marcus had delivered calves and foals during his ranch work as a kid, but human births were different, more complicated, more fragile. He pushed harder, his arms burning from the sustained effort. The altitude made breathing difficult even for him, his lungs working overtime in the thin air. The woman's dead weight shifted with each step, forcing him to constantly adjust his balance. They reached the ledge an hour into the journey. Marcus had traversed this section hundreds of times, a narrow path cut into the side of the mountain, maybe 3 feet wide, with a sheer rock wall on one side and a 200-foot drop on the other. No big deal when you were alone and sure-footed, a potential death sentence when carrying an unconscious pregnant woman. He paused at the edge, studying the path ahead. Ice had formed in patches where snowmelt from yesterday's brief thaw had refrozen. One wrong step and they'd both go over. The woman's eyes opened again. She looked down and he felt her body go rigid with fear. Don't look. Marcus kept his voice steady. Just close your eyes and trust me. Why? Her voice was stronger now. Why are you doing this? Because I'm here. Because you need help. Because 17 years ago, Marcus had failed to save someone, and it had broken something inside him. And maybe, just maybe, this was his chance at redemption. He didn't say any of that, just started across the ledge, his movements slow and deliberate, each step placed with absolute precision. The wind tried to push them sideways. Marcus leaned into it, compensating, his mountain-hardened legs steady despite the burden in his arms. Halfway across, the woman had another contraction. Her body spasmed and she grabbed his coat, her grip tight enough to hurt. Marcus froze, waiting for it to pass, not daring to move while her muscles were locked. Breathe, he told her. In through your nose, out through your mouth, like you're blowing out a candle. She tried. He felt her chest expand, felt her trying to gain control. The contraction lasted maybe 30 seconds, but felt like an hour. When it finally released, she went limp again, exhausted. Marcus finished crossing the ledge and allowed himself one moment of relief before pressing on. 2 miles left. The cabin sat in a protected hollow, sheltered from the worst of the wind. If they could just make it there, they'd have a chance. What's your name? The woman's voice was fading again. Marcus Webb. Yours? Elena. Elena Morrison. The name registered somewhere in the back of his mind. Morrison, he'd heard that name recently. Sam Rivera had mentioned it during his last visit 3 weeks ago. Something about a miner working the Copper Creek claims. James Morrison, maybe? Or David? Your husband at Copper Creek? Elena's face tightened. Yes. He left 6 weeks ago, said he'd be back before the baby came. Marcus said nothing. The Copper Creek claims were notorious. Dangerous work, poor oversight, and a management company that cared more about extraction rates than worker safety. He'd heard the stories from Sam. Cave-ins, toxic gas leaks, men who went into the mines and didn't come out. They climbed in silence for another half hour. Marcus's arms had gone numb, his shoulder muscles screaming. He shifted Elena's weight, trying to relieve the strain, but there was no comfortable way to carry another human being for miles through deep snow. The cabin appeared through the trees like a mirage. Solid log construction, smoke rising from the chimney. Marcus always kept a fire banked when he left. A habit from his first brutal winter up here, when he'd nearly frozen to death, returning to a cold cabin after a 3-day trap run. Almost there, he murmured, though Elena had lapsed into unconsciousness again. He kicked the door open and carried her inside. The warmth hit like a physical blow after hours in the freezing cold. Marcus laid Elena down on the chair nearest the fireplace, then immediately began building up the fire. Flames caught on the dry kindling, heat radiating outward. Elena's clothing was soaked through. Marcus had seen enough hypothermia cases to know she needed to get out of the wet garments immediately. He gathered dry clothes from his chest, warming them near the fire, then set up the privacy screen in the corner. You need to change, he said, helping her to her feet. Get out of those wet things. Elena tried to walk and her legs buckled. Marcus caught her, half carrying her behind the screen. She managed to peel off the wet coat, but her hands were shaking too badly to work the buttons on her dress. I'll do it, Marcus said, keeping his eyes averted. Just tell me if you need help. She nodded, too exhausted to care about modesty. Between the two of them, they got her out of the soaked dress and into dry wool pants and a flannel shirt, both far too large, but warm and dry. As Marcus helped her back to the chair, another contraction hit. This one was different, stronger. Elena's face went white and she grabbed his arm, her fingernails digging in through his shirt. I think, she gasped, trying to breathe through it, I think the baby's coming. Now. Marcus's military training kicked in. He'd been through combat, had performed field medicine under fire, had stayed calm while people died in his arms. This was just another crisis, just another situation that required clear thinking and steady hands. He helped Elena to the bed, already mentally cataloging what he'd need. Clean cloths, hot water, sharp knife sterilized in the fire, something to tie off the umbilical cord. He'd delivered animals before. The principle was the same. Nature knew what to do. He just had to help it along and try not to screw anything up. The contractions came faster now, each one building on the last. Elena fought through them with a kind of savage determination that Marcus found himself admiring. No screaming, no panic, just gritted teeth and controlled breathing and the absolute will to survive. Between contractions, she talked, maybe to distract herself, maybe because she needed to tell someone before it was too late. They burned my house. Victor Kane and his men said David owed them money from before we were married. $3,000 from some poker game. Marcus brought hot water, setting it within reach. He'd heard of Victor Kane. Everyone who traveled these mountains had heard the stories. A lone shark, an enforcer who followed the mining camps, preying on desperate men. Ruthless, but usually smart enough to avoid outright violence that might bring the law down on him. Did they hurt you? Elena's laugh was bitter. They burned everything. The cabin David built for us, the garden I planted, the crib he was making for the baby. Said it was a message. Said they'd be back if he didn't settle his debt. Another contraction cut off her words. Marcus moved to her side, offering his hand. She gripped it hard enough to cut off circulation. The contraction peaked and she bore down, her whole body straining. Marcus positioned himself to help with the delivery, trying to remember everything he'd learned from watching the ranch foreman help with difficult births. Support the head. Make sure the cord isn't wrapped around the neck. Keep the airway clear. The labor intensified. An hour passed, then two. Elena's strength was fading, but she kept pushing, kept fighting. Marcus offered water between contractions, words of encouragement that felt inadequate, but were all he had to give. I can see the head, he said finally. One more push. Come on, Elena, one more. She gathered herself for one final effort, her face contorted with strain. Then with a rush of fluid and blood, the baby slipped free into Marcus's waiting hands. For a terrifying moment, the infant was silent, motionless. Marcus cleared the airway, rubbed the tiny chest. Then the baby drew its first breath and let out a cry that filled the cabin. It's a girl, Marcus said softly, wrapping the infant in clean cloths. A healthy girl. He placed the baby in Elena's arms. Mother and child regarded each other for the first time, Elena's exhausted face transformed by something that looked like wonder. The baby had dark hair plastered to her small skull and eyes that seemed to take in everything despite being only minutes old. She's perfect, Elena's voice broke. After everything, she's perfect. Marcus finished the medical necessities, tying off and cutting the cord, delivering the afterbirth, cleaning up. Throughout it all, he was acutely aware that he'd just participated in something profound. A new life entering the world, hope born from desperation. What will you name her? Marcus asked as he brought Elena warm broth. Elena looked down at her daughter, her expression complex. Hope, she said finally. Her name is Hope. The name felt right somehow, appropriate given the circumstances. Over the next 3 days, Marcus cared for both mother and child with a competence that surprised even him. He'd lived alone for so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like to be needed by another person, to have someone depend on him for their survival. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Elena recovered quickly. By the second day, she was moving around the cabin, helping with small tasks. By the third, she was sitting at the table for meals, nursing Hope while they talked. Marcus found himself studying her when he thought she wasn't looking. There was a strength in her that he recognized, the kind forged by hardship. She'd been through hell and come out the other side still fighting. That took a special kind of courage. On the evening of the third day, as they sat by the fire with Hope sleeping peacefully in the cradle Marcus had fashioned from a wooden box and soft furs, Elena finally asked the question he'd been expecting. Why do you live up here alone? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, watching the flames dance. Because I couldn't live anywhere else. Not after. After what? He met her eyes. Afghanistan. I was Army Rangers. Led a squad. Good men. We got ambiguous intel on a target. I made the call to breach. Turned out the intel was wrong. The building was rigged. I was point, but I stepped wrong. Triggered the blast behind me instead of under me. The expression on her face told him she understood. My whole squad died. 8 men. I walked away without a scratch. Elena absorbed this in silence. Then, that's why you saved us. You're trying to balance the scales. Marcus shook his head. No, you can't balance scales like that. I saved you because you needed help and I was there. That's all. But Elena's eyes said she knew better. She understood survivor's guilt, the weight of being alive when others weren't. Maybe she carried her own version of that weight. The moment stretched between them, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with physical contact. Two damaged people finding unexpected connection in the isolation of the mountains. Then hope stirred and the spell broke. Elena lifted the baby, settling her against her shoulder. Marcus watched them, mother and child, silhouetted against the firelight. Something shifted in his chest. Something he'd kept locked away for 17 years. He was in trouble. Deep trouble. Because despite every wall he'd built, every defense he'd constructed, he was starting to care about these two. And caring meant risk, meant vulnerability, meant the possibility of loss. Marcus stood abruptly. I should check the perimeter, make sure the storm hasn't damaged anything. He grabbed his coat and escaped into the cold night air, needing distance, needing to think. The snow had stopped, but the temperature had dropped brutally. His breath frosted in front of his face. What was he doing? Elena had a husband somewhere, injured or dead, but still her husband. She'd be leaving as soon as she was strong enough. This was temporary. A moment out of time, nothing more, except it didn't feel like nothing. Marcus completed his circuit of the cabin, checking the wood supply, the trap line, the small barn where he kept his horse. Everything was secure. When he returned inside, Elena had moved to the bed, Hope cradled beside her. Marcus, she said softly, we need to talk. He removed his coat, hung it by the door. About what? About Hope. About who her father really is. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. He'd suspected from the way she'd reacted when he asked about her husband, the way she'd said Hope was perfect despite everything, as if she'd expected the child to be something else. Elena sat up, keeping Hope close. Her hands were shaking slightly. David and I were married for 6 months before he left for the mining camps. We tried to start a family. Nothing happened. Then about 2 weeks before he left, I was alone in town. David was buying supplies at the Furwood office. One of Victor Kane's men, Owen Garrett, came to collect some supposed debt from our neighbor. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Our neighbor wasn't home, but I was. Owen decided that was good enough. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. He didn't trust himself to speak. When I realized I was pregnant, I let David believe the baby was his. He was so happy, so excited about becoming a father. Elena's eyes shone with unshed tears. How could I tell him the truth? That his child was actually conceived through violence? The revelation changed everything. Marcus looked at Hope sleeping peacefully, innocent of the circumstances of her conception, and felt a protective rage building in his chest. Does David know? Elena shook her head. No, and I don't know if I can ever tell him. If he's even alive. Sam Rivera mentioned that there was a cave-in at Copper Creek 3 weeks ago, multiple miners trapped. Marcus absorbed this information. Owen Garrett, the name was familiar. He'd heard it from Sam too. Victor Kane's chief enforcer, a man known for violence and intimidation. You don't have to go back, Marcus heard himself saying. You can stay here, as long as you need. Elena met his eyes. Why would you do that? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Because. Marcus struggled to find the words. Because no one should have to face what you're facing alone. Because Hope deserves better than to be used as leverage by men like Victor Kane. Because in 3 days you've reminded me of something I'd forgotten. What it means to be human. To care about someone other than yourself. The silence that followed felt heavy with possibility. Then Elena spoke, her voice barely audible. I think I'm falling in love with you. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He stared at her, seeing the truth in her eyes, the vulnerability. She'd just handed him her heart, uncertain if he'd protect it or crush it. Elena, he started, then stopped. What could he say? That he felt the same pull? That in 3 days she'd become more important to him than anyone had been in 17 years? That the thought of her leaving already filled him with an ache he couldn't name? You're grateful, he managed finally. That's natural after what I did for you. But gratitude isn't love. Don't patronize me. Elena's voice held steel now. I know the difference between gratitude and love. I was grateful to David for marrying me, for giving me security. I never loved him. Not the way. She met his eyes. Not the way I could love you. Marcus felt the walls he'd built crumbling. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to help her, send her on her way, return to his solitary existence. Safe, alone, protected from the pain of loss. But looking at Elena, at Hope, at the life they could build together, he realized he didn't want safe anymore. He wanted this, complicated and messy and terrifying as it was. He crossed to the bed and sat beside her, careful not to disturb the sleeping baby. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. I came up here to hide from the world, to escape from pain and responsibility and connection. You've shown me what a coward I've been, running from life instead of living it. He took her hand. I don't know if this is love or just two broken people finding comfort in each other, but I know I've never felt this way before, like maybe I could be whole again. Elena's fingers tightened around his. Then we figure it out together, whatever comes. Marcus leaned forward and kissed her. Gentle at first, then deeper as 17 years of isolation and loneliness poured into that single moment of connection. When they finally broke apart, both of them were trembling. Hope stirred between them, making small sounds. Marcus looked down at her, at this perfect, innocent child born from violence, but destined for something better. He made a decision then, one that would change everything. I'll protect you both, no matter what it takes. Victor Kane, Owen Garrett, anyone who tries to hurt you. They'll have to go through me first. Elena's eyes shone. I believe you. They sat together in the firelight, a makeshift family forged from desperation and hope. Outside, the wind began to pick up again. Another storm coming. But inside the cabin, wrapped in warmth and newfound connection, they felt safe. For now. Neither of them knew that 60 miles away, in a mining camp saloon, Sam Rivera was hearing disturbing news. Victor Kane had returned to the territory, and he was asking questions about a pregnant woman who disappeared into the mountains after her cabin burned. The storm was far from over. It was only just beginning. Morning light filtered through the cabin windows, turning the frost on the glass into scattered diamonds. Marcus stood at the stove, frying salt pork and potatoes while Hope made small contented sounds from her cradle. 6 days since the birth. 6 days of a routine that felt both foreign and necessary. Elena emerged from behind the privacy screen, her hair still damp from washing. She'd regained color in her cheeks, her movements stronger each day. The transformation from the half-frozen woman he'd carried through the blizzard was remarkable. She crossed to Hope's cradle and lifted the baby, settling into the chair Marcus had positioned near the window. The morning feeding had become a ritual, one he found himself anticipating. The quiet domesticity of it. The peace. Tell me about Owen Garrett. Marcus's hand stilled on the spatula. He'd known this conversation was coming, had felt it building since Elena's confession 3 nights ago. What do you want to know? Elena adjusted Hope against her shoulder, her voice steady despite the difficulty of the subject. You recognize the name. I saw it in your face when I said it. Marcus transferred the food to plates, buying time. Yes, I knew him. He set breakfast on the table and sat across from her. Elena waited, patient, giving him space to find the words. Afghanistan, 2008. Owen was in my squad. Good soldier at first, disciplined, reliable. Then we rotated into Helmand province and something changed in him. Marcus stared at his untouched food, memories rising like floodwater. We were doing village sweeps, looking for Taliban weapons caches. Owen started disappearing during searches, coming back with things that weren't on any inventory sheet. Money, jewelry, family heirlooms. Elena's expression remained neutral, but he saw her arms tighten protectively around Hope. I confronted him, told him to stop. He laughed, said the locals were all Taliban sympathizers anyway, that taking their stuff was just making them pay for harboring the enemy. Marcus's jaw tightened. 2 weeks later, we got ambiguous intel about a weapons cache in a compound. I led the breach. Owen was supposed to be covering our 6. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken understanding. The explosion came from behind us. Someone had rigged the doorway we'd just come through. 8 men dead, albeit. I was point, so I was already through. Owen was hanging back, maybe 20 yards out. He walked away too. Marcus met Elena's eyes. After the investigation cleared me of wrongdoing, I started asking questions. Turns out Owen had made a deal with a local Taliban commander. They let him loot in exchange for intelligence on our patrol routes. The ambush was supposed to take out our whole squad. Owen would claim he'd been knocked unconscious by the blast, wake up the sole survivor, and collect payment from both sides. Christ, Elena's voice was barely a whisper. The army couldn't prove it, not definitively. So they gave Owen a general discharge and sent him home. I requested discharge too. Couldn't stay in after that. Couldn't trust the system that let a traitor walk free while good men died. He stood and moved to the window, needing distance from the memories. I came up here to forget, to put as much space as possible between me and the world that created men like Owen Garrett. Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight of realization. He's still working with Victor Kane, still hurting people. Marcus turned back to her. Tell me exactly what happened. Every detail. The telling took the better part of an hour. Elena's voice remained steady, clinical almost, as she described Owen's assault. David had been at the freight office. Owen had come to their neighbor's cabin, looking for payment on some fabricated debt. Found Elena alone instead. He said Victor would forgive the neighbor's debt if I cooperated. Elena's hands trembled slightly on Hope's back. When I refused, he forced his way in. Said Victor had noticed me in town, had mentioned how pretty I was, said he was doing me a favor, giving me a preview of what Victor expected when David inevitably couldn't pay. Marcus felt rage building in his chest, white-hot and barely controlled. How long ago? 10 months. Elena met his eyes. I didn't tell anyone, couldn't prove it. Victor Kane owns half the law enforcement in this territory. Owen would have claimed I invited him in, that I was trying to trap him. She paused, her voice dropping. When I realized I was pregnant, I convinced myself maybe it was David's. Maybe the timing worked out. But I knew. Deep down, I knew. Marcus crossed back to the table and knelt beside her chair, his hand covering hers where it rested on Hope's back. This child is innocent. Whatever her conception, she's yours. And if you'll let me, I'd be honored to help raise her as mine. Elena's eyes filled with tears. You mean that? It wasn't a question, but Marcus answered anyway. Every word. Hope chose that moment to finish feeding, her small face scrunching in what might have been satisfaction. Elena lifted her to burp, and Marcus found himself transfixed by the simple domesticity of the moment. This was what he'd been missing for 17 years. Not just companionship, but purpose, family. He stood and moved back to the stove, pouring coffee. We need to prepare. If Victor Kane is looking for you, he'll find this cabin eventually. Sam Rivera usually comes through every 3 weeks with news and supplies. He's overdue by 4 days. What do we do until then? Marcus considered. Teach you to survive up here. How to shoot, trap, navigate. If something happens to me, you need to be able to get yourself and Hope to safety. Over the following days, Marcus transformed from rescuer to instructor. He taught Elena to load and fire his spare rifle, setting up targets on the far side of the clearing. Her first attempts were wild, the recoil catching her off guard. But she learned quickly, her determination overriding inexperience. Squeeze, don't pull. Marcus stood behind her, adjusting her stance. Let the shot surprise you. The rifle cracked and bark exploded from the target tree. Elena's face lit with fierce satisfaction. Again. They practiced until her shoulder would be bruised, until she could hit the target 3 times out of 5. Not expert marksmanship, but enough to defend herself if necessary. Marcus also taught her the mountains themselves, the signs of changing weather in the clouds, how to find water under snow, which plants were edible and which would kill, the locations of game trails and natural shelter. One afternoon, as they returned from checking the trap line with Hope bundled against Elena's chest, they found fresh boot prints in the snow near the cabin. Marcus's hand went to his rifle. The prints led to the barn, then circled back toward the tree line. Someone had been watching, scouting, inside, now. Marcus's voice carried military authority. Elena obeyed without question, hurrying into the cabin with Hope. Marcus followed, barring the door and moving to the window. He studied the prints through his binoculars. 2 men, heavy boots. One set showed a distinctive wear pattern on the right heel. Victor's men. How long ago? Elena had laid Hope in the cradle and retrieved the rifle, checking the load with movements Marcus had drilled into her. Marcus judged the snow and the prints. 2 hours, maybe 3. They're gone now, but they'll report back. We don't have much time. He moved through the cabin with practiced efficiency, gathering weapons, ammunition, supplies. His mind raced through tactical scenarios. The cabin was defensible with good sight lines and solid construction. But against multiple attackers with superior numbers, defense would only buy time. Elena watched him prepare. What's the plan? Marcus paused, a box of cartridges in his hand. We wait for Sam. He should have been here days ago. Either he's delayed by weather or something's happened. Either way, we need information before we can act. And if Victor's men come back before Sam arrives, then we fight. The words hung in the air between them. Elena nodded slowly, her fear visible but controlled. She'd been through too much to fall apart now. That evening, Marcus taught Elena the layout of the cabin's defenses, the rifle positions that covered each approach, the emergency cache of weapons and food hidden in the root cellar, the escape route through the barn if the cabin became untenable. You memorize this. Marcus indicated points on the rough map he'd sketched. If I go down, you take Hope and run north. Follow the ridgeline for 3 miles, then drop into the valley. There's an old trapper's cabin at the base of the waterfall, abandoned, but it'll keep you alive until you can get to the trading post. Elena studied the map, her jaw set. I'm not leaving you. If it comes to that, you won't have a choice. Marcus held her gaze. Promise me, if I'm dead or dying, you save Hope. You survive. That's all that matters. Elena's eyes blazed. Don't talk like you're already dead. We're going to get through this. Her certainty almost convinced him. That night, Marcus took first watch while Elena slept with Hope beside her. He sat by the window, rifle across his lap, scanning the tree line. The moon was nearly full, turning the snow-covered clearing into a pale mirror. Movement would be easy to spot. Around 2 in the morning, he saw it, a shadow detaching from the trees on the eastern edge of the clearing. Then another. 2 men, moving with the careful steps of people trying to be quiet. Marcus's pulse accelerated, adrenaline sharpening his senses. He moved silently to the second window, watching their approach. They were splitting up, one heading toward the barn, the other circling toward the cabin's blind spot on the north side. He crossed to the bed and touched Elena's shoulder. She woke instantly, her hand going to the rifle beside her. 2 men, east and north. Marcus kept his voice low. Stay with Hope. If shooting starts, get to the root cellar. Elena nodded, already moving. Marcus returned to his position, tracking the man heading for the barn. 30 yards, 25. The figure paused, looking back toward his companion. Marcus made his decision. He couldn't let them get close enough to pose a real threat. Couldn't risk Hope or Elena. He opened the window carefully, rested the rifle on the sill, and took aim. The man's chest filled his sight picture. Marcus's breathing slowed, his finger finding the trigger. The rifle cracked, shattering the night silence. The man went down without a sound, crumpling into the snow. His companion dove for cover behind a fallen log, returning fire. Bullets punched through the cabin wall, showering Marcus with splinters. He dropped below the window, waited for the shooting to stop, then rose and fired twice more. Both shots hit the log, forcing the second man to keep his head down. Elena had moved to the opposite window, rifle ready. Marcus caught her eye and gestured, "Stay low, watch the south approach." She nodded, her face pale but determined. The second man made a break for the trees, running in a low crouch. Marcus tracked him, squeezed the trigger. The man stumbled but kept going, disappearing into the darkness. Silence fell, broken only by Hope's crying from the cradle. Elena hurried to comfort her while Marcus reloaded, his eyes never leaving the tree line. He wounded. Marcus spoke quietly. He'll make it back to Victor. Tell him we're armed and ready. Is that good or bad? Marcus considered. Depends on whether Victor wants to cut his losses or double down. He struck me as the vindictive type. He moved through the cabin, checking for damage. 3 bullet holes in the south wall. One had missed Elena by maybe 6 inches. The reality of how close they'd come to disaster settled over him. Outside, the dead man lay where he'd fallen. Marcus would need to check the body at first light, see if there was any intelligence to be gathered. Identification, orders, anything that might tell them what Victor was planning. Elena had calmed Hope and now stood at the window looking out at the corpse. I should feel something. Horror, guilt. But all I feel is relief that it's him and not you. Marcus moved to her side. That's survival instinct. Nothing to be ashamed of. She turned to him, her eyes dark. When did we become the kind of people who kill without hesitation? When men like Victor Kane and Owen Garrett made it necessary. They stood together in the pre-dawn darkness. Two people bound by violence and necessity. Hope had fallen back asleep, oblivious to how close she'd come to being orphaned. First light revealed Victor's scout clearly. Mid-30s, heavy-set with a poorly healed scar across his knuckles. No identification, but his pockets held $40 in a folded paper with directions to the cabin. Someone had drawn a detailed map marking approach routes and blind spots. They'd been planning this for days. Marcus studied the map, his military training analyzing the tactical thinking behind it. Whoever drew this knew the terrain, had scouted thoroughly. That meant Victor had more men in the area than just these two. He buried the body in a shallow grave beyond the tree line. The ground was frozen hard, making it brutal work. Elena watched from the cabin window, Hope in her arms. By midday, Marcus had reinforced the cabin's defenses. Felled trees created obstacles in the likely approach routes. Tripwires connected to pots filled with rocks, crude early warning systems. It wasn't much, but every advantage mattered. The second day after the attack, Sam Rivera finally arrived. Marcus saw him coming from a mile away, a lone rider leading a pack horse. He kept his rifle ready until he could confirm Sam's identity, then relaxed fractionally. Sam rode up to the cabin looking exhausted, his weathered face grim. He dismounted and Marcus clasped his hand, noting the tension in his old friend's grip. We need to talk. Sam's eyes moved to the cabin. And not out here. Inside, Sam removed his hat and nodded respectfully to Elena. Ma'am, I'm Sam Rivera, friend of Marcus's. Elena shifted Hope in her arms. You're the messenger Marcus mentioned, among other things. Sam accepted the coffee Marcus offered. I bring news, and none of it good. Marcus sat at the table, his posture deceptively relaxed. Victor Kane. Sam nodded. He's been in the territory for 2 weeks, asking questions about a pregnant woman whose cabin burned down, offering money for information. How much does he know? Everything. Sam's voice was flat. He knows you're here, knows about the baby, has men positioned at every trading post within 3 days' ride. He's cutting off your escape routes. Marcus absorbed this. How many men? Sam pulled out a small notebook, flipping pages. Best I can count, 8 plus Victor himself. Maybe more. He's been recruiting from the mining camps, offering double wages to anyone willing to ride with him. Elena's face had gone white. Why? Why is he doing this? David's debt can't be worth this much effort. Sam looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, there's something you should know about your husband. Marcus stiffened. What about him? There was a cave-in at Copper Creek 3 weeks ago. Sam's voice gentled. David Morrison was one of the miners trapped. They got him out alive, but he was hurt bad. Broken leg, internal injuries. They transported him to Denver for treatment. Is he alive? Elena's voice shook. Yes. Sam paused. But there's more. The mining company investigated after the accident, found that the support timbers had been deliberately weakened. Sabotage. They think someone was trying to kill David specifically. Who? Marcus demanded. Sam met his eyes. Victor Kane had been at the camp 2 days before the collapse. Several witnesses saw him arguing with David. Something about David refusing to pay a debt that didn't exist. Elena's hands tightened on Hope. He tried to kill David. When that didn't work, he came after me. Sam nodded slowly. I think Victor's obsession with you runs deeper than money. I've been asking around, calling in favors. Turns out Victor's wife died in childbirth 5 years ago. The baby died too. Since then, he's been unstable, fixated on the idea of having a family again. Marcus felt ice settle in his stomach. He sees Elena as a replacement, a woman he can control, and Hope as the child he lost. Sam's expression was bleak. I don't think he ever intended to collect David's debt. I think he created the debt as an excuse to get close to Elena. When David wouldn't cooperate, Victor tried to eliminate him. Elena looked like she might be sick. The assault. Owen Garrett. Was that Victor's orders? Probably testing to see if you were fertile. Sam's jaw tightened. Victor's been doing this for years, apparently, targeting women in isolated communities, usually widows or wives of men working dangerous jobs. Most were too terrified to report it. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. How long do we have? Sam checked his watch. I left the trading post at dawn, told Victor's men I was heading east to check trap lines. They'll probably figure out I came here by tomorrow morning, so we have less than a day. Marcus began gathering supplies. We need to move. Now, Elena stood, still holding hope. Where can we go that Victor won't find us? Sam cleared his throat. That's the other thing I came to tell you. There might be a way out. The marshal's office in Boulder has been investigating Victor for 2 years. They have a deputy named Sarah Chen who's building a case. If you can get to Boulder, testify about what happened, they can arrest Victor. Marcus shook his head. Boulder's 60 miles south through hostile territory, with a newborn and winter storms. We'd never make it. What if you didn't go south? Sam pulled out a map, spreading it on the table. There's an old mining road through the high passes, abandoned 20 years ago, but still passable if you know where to look. It swings wide around Victor's positions and comes out near Boulder from the west. Nobody uses it anymore because of rock slides and weather, but for someone with mountain experience. His eyes met Marcus's. You could make it in 3 days, maybe 4. Marcus studied the map, his tactical mind already calculating distances, hazards, supply requirements. It was risky, desperately risky, but staying here meant eventual confrontation with superior numbers. Elena moved to his side, looking down at the map. Can we really do this with hope? We'd have to. Marcus traced the route with his finger. Cache supplies at the halfway point. Travel light and fast. Rest during the worst weather and push hard during clear stretches. Sam nodded. I can ride to the first cache point tonight, drop food and firewood. Give you a head start. Marcus looked at Elena. She met his gaze steadily, and he saw the determination there. The same fierce will to survive that had kept her alive in the blizzard. We leave tonight. Marcus made the decision, 2 hours after full dark. Sam, you head out now. Make it look like you're going about normal business. Sam stood, putting on his hat. One more thing. He pulled a letter from his coat. From David Morrison. Had it sent to me at the trading post since I knew I'd be seeing you. Elena took the letter with trembling hands. Marcus watched her face as she read, saw shock, then sadness, then something like relief cross her features. What does it say? Elena lowered the letter. David's recovering. The doctors say he'll walk again, though he'll have a limp. She paused, her voice thick. He met someone, a nurse at the hospital. He says he's fallen in love with her. Marcus waited for the rest. He wants a divorce. Elena's eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. Says he knows hope can't be his, that he's always been sterile from radiation exposure at the mines 5 years ago. He never told me because he was ashamed, thought maybe God would give us a miracle. She set the letter on the table. He wants me to be happy. Says if I've found someone who can protect me and hope better than he could, I should go with them. He releases me from any obligation. Sam shifted uncomfortably. I should go. Give you folks time to process this. Marcus walked him to the door. Thank you, Sam, for everything. Sam gripped his shoulder. You keep that woman and child safe, you hear? World's got too much darkness already. Don't let Victor add to it. After Sam left, Marcus and Elena stood in silence. The letter had changed everything and nothing. They'd already committed to each other. David's blessing just made it official. He knew. Elena's voice was soft. All this time, he knew hope wasn't his, and he was going to raise her anyway. Marcus moved to her side. That takes a special kind of man. She turned to him. Do you think we'll make it? To Boulder? Yes. Marcus put every ounce of conviction he possessed into the word. Because failure isn't an option. They spent the remaining daylight preparing. Marcus packed supplies with military precision, balancing weight against necessity. Food, ammunition, medical supplies, extra clothing for hope. Everything they'd need to survive 4 days in winter mountains. Elena fashioned a carrier for hope, a sling that would keep the baby warm and secure against her body. She moved through the cabin, touching things Marcus had made. The cradle, the rocking chair, the small, carved animals he'd started making during the long evenings. You'll build new things. Marcus came up behind her. Wherever we end up, she leaned back against him. I know, it's just, this was going to be our sanctuary, our safe place. It still can be. Marcus turned her to face him. After Victor's dealt with, after you've testified and he's in prison, we can come back here, raise hope in the mountains like we planned. Elena's smile was fragile but genuine. I'd like that. As darkness fell, they made final preparations. Marcus did one last perimeter check, his senses alert for any sign of Victor's men. The night was clear and cold, stars burning like ice chips in the black sky. Perfect traveling weather. He returned to the cabin to find Elena nursing Hope one last time before they left. Mother and child in lamplight, the scene achingly domestic. Marcus committed it to memory, storing it against whatever darkness lay ahead. Elena looked up. Is it time? Marcus nodded. Time to go. They extinguished the lamps, leaving the cabin dark and cold. Marcus led the way into the night, Elena following with Hope bundled against her chest. Behind them, the cabin stood empty, a shell waiting for a future that might never come. The mountain trail was treacherous in darkness, but Marcus knew every step. They moved in silence, communication reduced to hand signals and trust. Hope slept through the journey, lulled by her mother's heartbeat and the gentle rhythm of walking. They'd been traveling for maybe 2 hours when Marcus heard it. Horses, multiple riders coming fast from the south, off the trail. Marcus grabbed Elena's arm, pulling her into the deep shadows beneath a rock overhang. They pressed against the stone, hardly breathing. The riders thundered past, 6 men on horseback. Victor's voice carried clearly in the cold air. The cabin's dark. They've either gone to ground or they're running. Spread out. Search the area. Elena's hand found Marcus's in the darkness, her grip tight with fear. Hope stirred but didn't wake. The riders continued north, toward the cabin. Marcus counted to 100, then led Elena back onto the trail. They moved faster now, urgency overriding caution. Behind them, the night erupted with shouts. Victor's men had reached the cabin, found it empty. The hunt was on. Marcus pushed harder, Elena keeping pace despite the burden of Hope. The first cache point was still hours away. They needed to put as much distance as possible between themselves and pursuit before dawn revealed their trail. The mountains rose around them, ancient and indifferent. Somewhere ahead lay safety, justice, a future. Somewhere behind, Victor Kane and his men prepared for war. Marcus looked back once at Elena, saw her determination mirroring his own. They would make it. They had to. Hope's life depended on it. Dawn broke over the ridgeline like a wound, red and raw. Marcus pushed through knee-deep snow, his breath coming in controlled gasps despite the burning in his lungs. Behind him, Elena moved with surprising endurance, Hope strapped tight against her chest. 4 hours of hard travel since they'd heard Victor's riders at the cabin. 4 hours of putting distance between themselves and death. The cache point emerged from the pre-dawn gloom, a lightning-scarred pine with a distinctive double trunk, exactly where Sam's map indicated. Marcus swept snow away from the base, revealing the oilcloth-wrapped bundles Sam had left. Dried meat, hard bread, matches, ammunition. Enough to sustain them for another day's push. Rest here. Marcus handed Elena water from his canteen. 10 minutes. We eat while we can. Elena sank against a tree trunk, her face pale with exhaustion. She'd been nursing Hope during brief stops, but the constant movement meant the baby had been fussy, crying more than Marcus liked. Sound carried in these mountains. Every wail was a beacon. How far behind are they? Elena's voice was steady despite her obvious fatigue. Marcus studied the trail below, looking for movement. Hard to say. If they're experienced trackers, maybe 2 hours. If not, we might have bought ourselves until midday. He distributed food, forcing himself to eat despite the adrenaline killing his appetite. Fuel was fuel. Exhaustion would get them killed as surely as a bullet. Hope had quieted against Elena's chest. Small fingers wrapped around her mother's thumb. The baby's eyes were open, alert, tracking movement with the unfocused attention of the very young. 10 days old and already fleeing for her life. The injustice of it made Marcus's jaw clench. Tell me about Boulder. Elena chewed the dried meat mechanically. What happens when we get there? Marcus had been thinking about that question since they'd left. We find Deputy Chen. You give testimony about Victor, about Owen's assault, about the cabin burning. Federal marshals get involved because Victor's been operating across state lines. They arrest him, build a case, put him away. And if the law doesn't care? Lena's eyes met his. If they decide a mountain woman's word isn't enough, then we disappear. Marcus kept his voice low, aware of how sound traveled in the cold air. Canada's only a few weeks north if we push hard, or we head to California. Find someplace Victor's reach doesn't extend. Elena nodded slowly, but Marcus saw the doubt in her eyes. She'd been failed by systems before. Expected failure now. They finished eating in silence. Marcus repacked the supplies, distributing weight carefully. Every ounce mattered at this altitude, where thin air made every step a battle. Ready? He offered his hand. Elena took it, letting him pull her to her feet. Hope made a small sound of protest at the movement, then settled. They were moving again before the sun fully cleared the mountains. The trail climbed higher, following a narrow path carved by miners decades ago. To their left, sheer rock walls. To their right, a drop that disappeared into fog and distance. Marcus had traversed this route once before, years ago, scouting potential trap lines. He'd turned back then, deemed it too dangerous for regular use. Now it was their only option. They'd been climbing for maybe an hour when Marcus heard it. The distinctive crack of a branch breaking under weight. Not wind, not animal. Human. Down. Marcus pushed Elena against the rock wall, shielding her and Hope with his body. His rifle came up, scanning the trail behind them. Movement in the trees below. 3 riders picking their way up the steep slope. Too far for accurate shooting, but close enough to see clearly. Victor Kane rode point, his pale eyes scanning the terrain with predatory focus. Behind him, 2 of his men, rifles across their saddles. They'd been found. Marcus calculated angles, distances, options. The riders would reach this section of trail in 15 minutes. The path ahead narrowed to barely a foot wide in places, impossible to traverse quickly. Fighting here meant exposing Elena and Hope to crossfire. We have to move. He kept his voice barely above a breath. Fast as you can. Don't look down. They pressed forward, moving sideways along the ledge. Marcus went first, testing each foothold before allowing Elena to follow. Hope had started crying, the sound thin and fragile against the vast emptiness beside them. Elena struggled to comfort the baby while maintaining balance. Her boots slipped on ice, and Marcus caught her arm, steadying her. For a heart-stopping moment, they swayed together, inches from the edge. I've got you. Marcus's voice was iron, not letting go. They made it across the narrow section, just as the first rifle shot cracked through the air. The bullet struck rock 6 feet above Marcus's head, showering them with stone chips. Run. Marcus shoved Elena ahead of him, providing what cover he could. More shots followed, wild and poorly aimed at this distance, but deadly nonetheless. The trail widened into a small clearing where an old mining shack leaned against the mountain. Marcus pulled Elena inside, assessing their position. 2 windows, 1 door, wooden walls that would stop nothing. A death trap. But it was the only cover available. Keep Hope quiet if you can. Marcus positioned himself at the east window, rifle ready. I'll try to slow them down. He sighted down the barrel, waiting. Victor's men appeared at the far edge of the clearing, dismounting cautiously. Smart. They'd learned from the cabin attack that Marcus wasn't an easy target. One of the men started across the open ground, using trees for cover. Marcus tracked him, waiting for a clear shot. The man broke cover and Marcus fired. The bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He went down hard, screaming. The second man opened fire, bullets punching through the shack's thin walls. Elena threw herself over Hope, shielding the baby with her body. Marcus returned fire, 3 quick shots that forced the shooter to retreat. Then Victor's voice cut through the chaos. Marcus Webb, I know you can hear me. Marcus didn't respond, his eyes scanning for movement. I'm not interested in you, soldier. Victor's voice carried false reasonableness. This is about family, about what's mine. Elena stiffened. Marcus caught her eye, shook his head. Don't engage, but Victor kept talking. Elena Morrison, I've been patient. Gave your husband every chance to do right. Wasn't my fault he chose the mines over you. Wasn't my fault he couldn't give you what you needed. Marcus saw Elena's hands clench on the rifle Sam had given her. I can give you security. Victor's tone turned almost gentle. A real home, protection. That baby deserves a father who can provide, not some mountain hermit who'll get you killed running through the snow. The words were calculated to wound, to create doubt. Marcus recognized the psychological tactics. Victor was trying to fracture their bond, make Elena question her choices. You burned my home. Elena's voice rang out clear and strong, surprising both Marcus and Victor. Sent your animal to rape me, tried to murder my husband, and you call that providing? Silence. Then Victor's voice came back, colder now. Owen was supposed to verify you were fertile, got overzealous. I disciplined him for that. Marcus's blood went cold. Victor was admitting it, admitting he'd ordered the assault. Elena's voice shook with rage. You're insane. I'm practical. Victor's footsteps crunched in the snow, moving closer. Your husband was sterile from radiation at the mines. I did you a favor, really. Gave you a child when he never could. Marcus moved to the window, risked a look. Victor stood in the open, 30 yards away, his rifle lowered. The man was either supremely confident or genuinely unhinged. Probably both. Come out, Elena. Bring the baby. We'll leave the soldier alive if you cooperate. You have my word. Marcus met Elena's eyes. She gave a slight shake of her head. No surrender. No negotiation. Your word means nothing. Marcus called out. Like the debt you invented to justify stalking her. Like the promises you made to the miners before you sabotaged Copper Creek. Victor's expression flickered. So you know about that. Sam Rivera's been busy. David Morrison's alive. Marcus let that sink in. Recovering in Denver, ready to testify that you tried to kill him. Victor laughed, the sound genuinely amused. David Morrison's a cripple who'll never work again. His testimony won't matter when I have his wife and child. The law understands a man's right to his family. She's not your family. Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger. She's mine. The words hung in the cold air. Marcus realized he'd made it real, declared his claim in a way that couldn't be taken back. Elena's sharp intake of breath told him she'd heard, understood the weight of it. Victor's face hardened. Then you die with her. He raised his rifle and Marcus dove sideways as the window exploded inward. Glass and wood fragments filled the air. Marcus rolled, came up firing. His shots forced Victor to retreat, but return fire from the trees was immediate and sustained. The shack's walls disintegrated under the onslaught. Marcus grabbed Elena, pulling her into the corner that offered the most protection. Hope screamed, terrified by the noise. We can't stay here, Marcus shouted over the gunfire. Back window. Go. Elena hesitated. What about you? I'll cover your retreat. Marcus was already moving, firing through the gaps in the wall. Get Hope to safety. That's all that matters. Elena's eyes blazed, but she nodded. She slipped through the back window, Hope clutched tight. Marcus gave her a 30-second head start, then followed, laying down covering fire. They ran. The terrain beyond the shack was nightmare. Loose scree and ice-covered rock, treacherous footing that threatened to send them tumbling down the mountainside with every step. Marcus heard Victor's men crashing through the underbrush behind them, gaining ground this way. Marcus grabbed Elena's hand, pulling her toward a cluster of massive boulders. They squeezed through a narrow gap into a small hollow. Not much protection, but it would break the line of sight. Elena was gasping, her face white. Hope had gone quiet, the baby's silence more terrifying than crying. Marcus checked her quickly. Still breathing, eyes unfocused. Shock, maybe, or exhaustion. They can't be far. One of Victor's men, close enough that Marcus could hear individual words. Spread out. Watch for ambush. Marcus checked his ammunition. 3 rounds in the rifle, maybe a dozen in his pockets. Not enough for a sustained fight. Elena's rifle held 5 rounds, against 4, possibly 5 men. The math wasn't good. Then Marcus heard a sound that made his blood freeze. A baby crying, not Hope. A recording, tinny and distorted, playing from somewhere in the trees. Victor's voice followed. Clever thing, phonographs. Found this one in a mining camp. Had Owen record his daughter before she died. Sounds just like a newborn, doesn't it? The trap was obvious but effective. Elena's maternal instincts warred with tactical thinking. Marcus saw it in her face. The desperate need to investigate any crying baby. It's not real. Marcus gripped her shoulder. It's a lure. But the crying continued, pulling at something primal. Victor knew exactly what he was doing. Movement to their left. One of Victor's men, trying to flank their position. Marcus raised his rifle, but Elena touched his arm. Let me. Her voice was steady. Before Marcus could respond, Elena stepped out from cover and fired. The shot took Victor's man in the chest, dropping him instantly. She ducked back behind the boulder as return fire chipped stone. Marcus stared at her. When did you learn to shoot like that? I had a good teacher. Elena was already reloading. And I'm protecting my daughter. The recording had stopped. Marcus heard low voices, Victor's men regrouping. They'd lost 2 men now, maybe 3. The odds were shifting. Then a new voice cut through the standoff, one that made Marcus's heart drop. Hello, Marcus. Been a long time. Owen Garrett stepped into view from the trees. He looked different than Marcus's memories. Harder, meaner. The years since Afghanistan had carved cruelty into features that were already brutal. He held hope in his arms. Marcus felt his world narrow to a single point. The baby, helpless in the grip of a monster. Owen smiled, reading Marcus's reaction. Found her about 20 yards back. Smart, hiding her in that little snow hollow. Almost missed her. His grip tightened and Hope whimpered. Almost. Elena made a sound like a wounded animal. Marcus's hand shot out, stopping her from doing something suicidal. Give her back. Marcus's voice was flat, empty of everything except the promise of violence. Owen's smile widened. Or what? You'll shoot? Risk hitting the baby? He was right. At this distance, with Hope in his arms, any shot Marcus took could hit the child. Victor emerged from the trees, flanked by his remaining men, 4 against 2, with Hope as hostage. The tactical situation had gone from bad to impossible. Drop the rifles, Victor's voice carried absolute authority. Both of you or Owen drops the baby. Literally. Marcus met Elena's eyes, saw the calculation there, the desperate search for options, found none. They laid down their weapons. Smart choice. Victor approached, kicking the rifles away. You've given me quite the chase, Marcus. Killed 3 of my men. Cost me time and money. His fist caught Marcus in the stomach, driving the air from his lungs. Marcus took the blow, stayed on his feet. His eyes never left Hope. Elena lunged forward, but one of Victor's men grabbed her, pinning her arms. She fought like a wildcat, all teeth and desperation, until the man backhanded her hard enough to split her lip. Marcus felt something break inside him. The control he'd maintained since Afghanistan, the discipline that had kept him human. It shattered. He moved. The nearest of Victor's men never saw it coming. Marcus's elbow caught him in the throat, crushing his windpipe. As the man fell, Marcus grabbed his rifle, spun, and fired in one fluid motion. The second man went down with a bullet between his eyes. Victor dove for cover, shouting. Owen stumbled backward, startled, his grip on Hope loosening. Elena tore free and ran for her daughter. Owen swung the baby away, using her as a shield. His other hand came up with a pistol, aimed at Elena's chest. Marcus fired. The bullet hit Owen's shoulder, spinning him around. Hope flew from his grip, a tiny bundle tumbling through the air. Elena caught her daughter with a mother's instinct, rolling as she hit the ground to protect the baby. Hope screamed, alive and furious. Owen scrambled to his feet, blood streaming from his shoulder, and ran. Not toward Victor, away from the fight, into the mountains. Running. Marcus didn't think, didn't calculate, just ran after him, leaving Elena with the rifles and what remained of Victor's men. The chase led higher into terrain that should have been impassable. Owen moved with the desperate strength of a wounded animal, leaving a blood trail in the snow. Marcus followed, his ranger training taking over, reading the signs. Owen was heading for the ice caves. Marcus knew them, had explored them years ago, decided they were too unstable for shelter. The caves ran deep into the mountain, formed by ancient meltwater, beautiful and deadly. He caught up to Owen at the cave entrance. The man had stopped, swaying, blood loss making him clumsy. His pistol came up, but Marcus was already moving, closing distance before Owen could aim. They collided in a tangle of limbs and violence. The pistol went flying, skittering across ice. Marcus's fist caught Owen's jaw, snapping his head back. Owen countered with a knee to Marcus's ribs, hard enough to crack bone. They fought in silence, no breath to spare for words, fists and elbows and desperate grabbing. They crashed against the cave wall, stalactites shattering around them. Owen's hand found a rock, swung it at Marcus's head. Marcus blocked with his forearm, felt something crack, grabbed Owen's throat and squeezed. Owen's eyes bulged. His hands clawed at Marcus's face, found his eyes. Marcus jerked his head back, losing his grip. They separated, circling in the cramped space. Blood dripped from both of them, steaming in the freezing air. She screamed your name. Owen's voice was ragged, mocking. When I was on top of her. Did you know that? Screamed for Marcus Webb to save her. Marcus felt the rage Victor had been building, the fury he had been controlling, finally slip its leash. He roared and charged. Owen tried to sidestep, but his wounded shoulder made him slow. Marcus caught him in a tackle that drove them both deeper into the cave, into darkness. They fell together, sliding on ice, tumbling through a narrow passage. Impact, stone against bone, the world spinning. They landed on a ledge maybe 20 feet down. Marcus recovered first, driven by pure adrenaline. Owen was trying to rise, one arm useless from the gunshot. Marcus grabbed him by the throat again. This time he didn't let go. Owen fought, desperate now, knowing he was dying. His good hand found Marcus's face again, fingers digging, trying to blind. Marcus slammed Owen's head against the ice wall. Once. Twice. On the third impact, something changed in Owen's eyes. The fight went out of them. Victor never. Owen coughed blood. Never cared about money. Wanted her womb. Legacy. His wife. Couldn't give him. The confession came in fragments, dying man's words. Marcus loosened his grip slightly, letting Owen speak. He's mad. Owen's voice was fading. Thinks Elena's some kind of replacement for what he lost. Why tell me this? Owen's laugh was wet, painful. Because you'll never see it coming. He's not. Done. Then Owen's eyes went vacant. His body went limp. Marcus held him for another moment, making sure. Then he let go, letting the corpse slide away into the darkness below. He sat there on the ice ledge, his broken ribs screaming, his hands shaking with adrenaline crash. Owen Garrett was dead. The man who'd betrayed Marcus's squad, who'd assaulted Elena, who'd helped create hope through violence. Dead. Marcus felt no satisfaction, just exhaustion and the knowledge that this wasn't over. Owen's last words echoed. Victor wasn't done. The climb back up was agony. Every movement jarred his ribs. His left arm hung useless, possibly fractured. But he forced himself up, hand over hand, until he reached the cave entrance. The sun was lower now, afternoon sliding toward evening. He'd been gone maybe an hour, long enough for anything to have happened. Marcus limped back toward where he'd left Elena. His rifle was gone, lost in the fight with Owen. He had only his knife and whatever weapons he could scavenge. He heard voices before he saw them, Elena's, raised in defiance, and Victor's, cold with rage. Marcus crested a small ridge and stopped. Below, in a small clearing, Elena knelt in the snow with hope clutched to her chest. Victor stood over her, his rifle aimed at her head. Of his men, Marcus saw no sign. Dead or fled, he couldn't tell. It was just Victor now, one man against two, except Elena was unarmed and helpless with the baby. Where's Owen? Victor's question was directed at Elena, but his eyes scanned the tree line. Dead. Marcus stepped into view, his voice carrying clearly. Buried in an ice cave where he belongs. Victor's rifle swung toward him. You're persistent, I'll give you that. Marcus moved forward slowly, hands visible. Owen told me, before he died, about your wife. Victor's expression flickered. What about her? That she couldn't have children? That it broke something in you when she died trying? Stop talking, but Marcus continued, reading Victor like he'd read enemy commanders in Afghanistan. You've been looking for a replacement ever since. Young women in isolated communities, testing them. Owen was your tool for that. I said stop. Elena wasn't random. Marcus was close now, maybe 30 feet. You saw her in town, noticed her, started building the debt story as an excuse to get close. When David didn't cooperate, you tried to kill him. When that failed, you came after Elena directly. Victor's rifle was shaking, his finger on the trigger. You burned her home to make her dependent, hunted her through the mountains to prove you could protect her. Marcus took another step. You're not a criminal, Victor. You're just a broken man trying to bring back something that's gone forever. She can give me what Margaret couldn't. Victor's voice cracked. A son, a legacy, a future. Elena spoke then, her voice gentle despite the rifle aimed at her. I'm not your wife, Victor. I can't replace what you lost. You could try. Victor's eyes were wet now. We could try. I'm in love with someone else. Elena's hand found Hope's small head. This baby is mine, not yours. We could never be what you need. The rifle lowered fractionally. Marcus saw his opening. 3 steps, maybe 4, and he could reach Victor. Disarm him. But Victor saw it too. The rifle came back up, steadied. Then you're no use to me. Victor's finger tightened. Marcus lunged. The rifle cracked. Time slowed. Marcus saw Elena throw herself sideways, Hope wrapped in her arms. Saw Victor swing the rifle toward him, saw the muzzle flash, felt nothing. Marcus crashed into Victor, driving the older man into the ground. The rifle went flying. They grappled, rolling through snow-stained red with blood from Marcus's earlier wounds. Victor was strong, fueled by madness and desperation. But Marcus had rage and training and the knowledge that Elena was watching. That Hope's future depended on this moment. He got his hands around Victor's throat. Victor's eyes bulged. He clawed at Marcus's hands, drawing blood. But Marcus's grip was iron, fed by 17 years of survivor's guilt and the fierce need to protect what he'd found. Victor's struggles weakened, stopped. Marcus held on until he was absolutely certain. Then he let go and stumbled backward, collapsing in the snow. Elena was at his side immediately, checking for wounds. Hope cried in her arms, alive and whole. Are you hit? Elena's hands moved over him frantically. Marcus, are you hit? He checked himself, found the bullet had gone wide. Just bruises and the broken ribs from fighting Owen. I'm okay. Marcus's voice was hoarse from exertion. Is Hope? She's fine. Elena's laugh was half-sob. We're both fine. They held each other there in the snow, 3 survivors of Victor Kane's madness. Around them, the mountains stood silent witness. It was over. Marcus forced himself to his feet, surveying the aftermath. Bodies scattered through the clearing. Victor's empire of violence reduced to corpses freezing in the snow. We need to move. Marcus's tactical mind reasserted itself. More of Victor's men might be out there, and we need to report this before someone stumbles on the scene. Elena nodded, rising with Hope. Where, Boulder? Like we planned. Marcus retrieved what weapons and supplies he could carry. Give testimony. Make sure this ends properly. They walked through the carnage together, not speaking. The fight had drained something from both of them. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only exhaustion and the knowledge of what they'd done. Marcus had killed 4 men today. Maybe 5, depending on whether Victor's man from the clearing had survived. Elena had killed 1. The weight of it would come later. For now, they had to survive. They made camp that night in a protected hollow, building a small fire. Elena nursed Hope while Marcus cleaned and bandaged his wounds. The broken ribs would heal. The fractured arm would need proper medical attention. Everything else was just pain. You were right, Elena's voice broke the silence. About Victor being broken doesn't make what he did forgivable. No, but it makes it sad. She looked down at Hope. He could have gotten help, grieved properly. Instead, he destroyed lives trying to recreate what he'd lost. Marcus added wood to the fire. Some people don't know how to grieve. They just know how to hurt. Elena met his eyes. Are you talking about Victor or yourself? The question cut deep. Marcus considered deflecting, then decided she deserved honesty. Both, maybe. I spent 17 years hiding from my grief instead of facing it. Took you and Hope to show me there was another way. And what way is that? Living, Marcus moved closer, careful of his injuries. Choosing connection over isolation. building something new instead of mourning what's lost. Hope had fallen asleep, her small face peaceful in the firelight. Elena shifted her in her arms, making her comfortable. What happens now after Boulder? After testimony and trials and everything else? Marcus had been thinking about that question since they'd left Victor's body in the snow. We go home, back to the cabin, rebuild if we need to, raise hope in the mountains like we planned. Elena smiled. Together. Together, Marcus confirmed. No more running, no more hiding. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire. Tomorrow they'd resume the journey to Boulder. Face the law, give testimony, ensure justice was served. But tonight they were just three people finding warmth against the cold. Marcus looked at Elena and Hope, his unexpected family, and felt something shift in his chest. The guilt that had driven him into isolation for 17 years was still there, would always be there. But it was no longer the only thing he felt. He felt hope. The irony of the baby's name wasn't lost on him. Hope, born from violence but destined for something better. A symbol of survival against impossible odds. Marcus closed his eyes, letting exhaustion finally claim him. His last thought before sleep was a promise. He would protect them. Whatever came next, however hard the road ahead, he would keep this family safe. He'd failed his squad in Afghanistan. He wouldn't fail them. The fire burned low and the stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to human suffering and human triumph alike. The mountains kept their vigil, ancient and patient, and in a hollow sheltered from the wind, three survivors slept, dreaming of futures they'd fought to make possible. Boulder emerged from the pine forest like a promise kept. 2 days of hard travel since Victor's death, Marcus's ribs screaming with every step, Elena's determination never wavering. Hope had cried through most of the journey, her small voice echoing off canyon walls. But she was alive. They were all alive. The town sprawled across a valley floor, larger than Marcus remembered from his last visit 8 years ago. Electric lights glowed in windows, even though it was barely dusk. Automobiles moved along paved streets. The modern world, which felt alien after so long in the mountains. Marcus stopped at the edge of town, suddenly uncertain. He'd spent 17 years avoiding places like this. The noise, the crowds, the weight of civilization pressing in from all sides. Elena touched his arm, reading his hesitation. We don't have to stay long, just long enough to finish this. He nodded and they continued down the main street. People stared at them. Marcus saw it in their faces. The judgment of townspeople looking at a man in blood-stained buckskins, a woman carrying a baby in a makeshift sling, both of them hollow-eyed with exhaustion. Let them stare. The marshal's office occupied a brick building near the courthouse. Marcus pushed through the door, Elena following. A young deputy looked up from his desk, his expression shifting from boredom to alarm. Can I help you folks? We need to see Deputy Sarah Chen. Marcus kept his voice level. It's about Victor Kane. The deputy's demeanor changed immediately. He stood, hand moving toward his sidearm. Victor Kane's men have been causing trouble for months. You with them? Against them. Elena stepped forward. He tried to kill me and my baby. Murdered his way through half the mountain territory. The deputy studied them with new eyes. Wait here. He disappeared into a back room. Marcus and Elena stood in the small office, the warmth making Marcus's injuries ache. He wanted to sit but didn't trust his body to cooperate if he needed to move quickly. The deputy returned with a woman in her 30s, Chinese features, sharp eyes that took in everything. Deputy Sarah Chen wore her authority with quiet confidence. You're here about Victor Kane. Her voice was professional, but Marcus heard the interest beneath. Tell me everything. They spent the next 3 hours in her office. Elena did most of the talking, while Marcus added details when needed. Chen took notes, asked pointed questions, occasionally sent the young deputy to fetch documents or verify information. When Elena described Owen Garrett's assault, Chen's expression remained neutral, but Marcus saw her knuckles whiten on her pen. When Marcus detailed the fight at the cabin, the chase through the mountains, Chen leaned forward. Where are the bodies? Marcus pulled out the hand-drawn map he'd made that morning. Victor's here, in this clearing. His men scattered in the area. Owen Garrett's in the ice caves, about 20 feet down the main passage. Chen studied the map. That's federal land, multiple homicides. This is going to require investigation. Self-defense, women. Marcus met her eyes. Victor and his men initiated every confrontation. We were fleeing for our lives. Chen tapped her pen against the desk. I believe you. But believing and proving are different things. She paused, considering. Victor Kane's been on our radar for 2 years. Multiple complaints, but witnesses kept disappearing or recanting. We knew he was running a criminal enterprise. We just couldn't prove it. Elena shifted hope in her arms. What happens now? Chen stood and walked to a filing cabinet, pulling out a thick folder. Now we build a case. Your testimony, the physical evidence, the bodies. She opened the folder, revealing photographs and documents. Plus what we already had, Victor's financial records showing money laundering, witness statements from 3 other women who claimed similar harassment. Marcus leaned forward. 3 others? Chen nodded grimly. All married to men working dangerous jobs. All approached by Victor with debt collection stories. 2 of the husbands died in workplace accidents that were ruled suspicious but never proven. The 3rd family disappeared before we could get testimony. So Victor's been doing this for years. Elena's voice was hollow. At least 5 that we know of. Chen closed the folder. You 2 might have broken the pattern, given us enough evidence to close this case permanently. What about Owen Garrett? Marcus needed to know if there would be consequences for that killing. Chen met his eyes. Owen Garrett was dishonorably discharged from the Army after an investigation into war crimes. He's been wanted on assault charges in 3 states. Her expression softened fractionally. Nobody's going to shed tears over his death. The young deputy returned with coffee and sandwiches. Marcus hadn't realized how hungry he was until the smell hit him. He and Elena ate while Chen outlined the legal process ahead. You'll need to stay in Boulder for at least a week, Chen said. Give formal depositions, meet with the federal prosecutor. We'll need to verify your story with physical evidence from the crime scenes. We don't have money for a hotel. Elena glanced at Marcus. Or medical care. He has broken ribs and a fractured arm. Chen considered this. The marshal's office has a discretionary fund for witness protection. I can authorize temporary housing and medical treatment. She scribbled on a form. Dr. Mitchell runs a clinic 2 streets over. Tell him I sent you. Marcus found himself surprised by her efficiency, her willingness to help. He'd expected bureaucracy and suspicion. Chen seemed to read his thoughts. I became a deputy because I was tired of men like Victor Kane getting away with hurting people. You did what the law couldn't. That matters. The clinic was small but clean. Dr. Mitchell was a gray-haired man with gentle hands who'd seen his share of mountain violence. He examined Marcus's injuries with practiced efficiency. 2 cracked ribs, hairline fracture in the ulna. The doctor wrapped Marcus's ribs tightly. You're lucky nothing punctured a lung. As for the arm, it'll heal on its own, but you need to keep it immobilized for 6 weeks. While the doctor worked, a nurse examined Hope. The baby had survived the journey remarkably well, though she was underweight and showed signs of mild dehydration. She's a fighter. The nurse smiled at Elena. Get some proper food and rest. She'll thrive. They stayed in a boarding house Chen had arranged, a clean room with an actual bed and running water. Elena cried when she saw it, the accumulated stress of the past weeks finally breaking through. Marcus held her while she sobbed. Hope between them, their makeshift family finding safety at last. That night, after Hope had fallen asleep and Elena dozed in the chair beside the bed, Marcus stood at the window looking out at the town. Electric lights pushed back the darkness. Somewhere out there, people lived ordinary lives, went to jobs, raised families, dealt with normal problems. Could he do that? After 17 years of isolation and a week of violence, could he rejoin the world? Movement beside him. Elena, awake again, can't sleep. Her voice was soft. Too much quiet. Marcus smiled wryly. Strange thing to complain about after living alone for so long. Elena slipped her hand into his. It'll get easier. We'll figure it out together. The next morning brought David Morrison. Marcus was at the clinic getting his arm properly cast when the young deputy found him. There's someone here to see you. The man's wife. The deputy seemed uncomfortable. Says his name is David Morrison. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He'd known this confrontation was coming, but hadn't expected it so soon. Where is he? Hotel lobby. Says he won't leave until he talks to you. Marcus finished with the doctor and walked the 3 blocks to their boarding house, his mind racing. What did you say to a man whose wife you'd claimed, whose child carried another man's violence? David Morrison sat in the lobby's worn armchair, his left leg extended stiffly. The crutches beside him told the story of Copper Creek. He looked up when Marcus entered, his face hard to read. Marcus Webb. David's voice was stolen. Mind if we talk? Marcus sat across from him, keeping his distance. Your wife and daughter are upstairs. Sleeping, I know. I spoke to Deputy Chen. She told me everything. David's hands tightened on his crutches. About Victor, about Owen, about you. Silence stretched between them. Marcus waited, letting David set the pace. I want to see them, David finally said. Elena and Hope. But I need to understand something first. Ask, do you love her? The directness caught Marcus off guard. He considered lying, softening it, then decided David deserved truth. Yes, David nodded slowly as if he'd expected this answer. And Hope? Even knowing she's not yours by blood? Especially because of that. Marcus met David's eyes. She deserves a father who chooses her. Not one bound by obligation or blood, but by love. David was quiet for a long moment. In Denver, when Sam Rivera's message found me, I thought about coming back, fighting for my family. Then I realized something. What? I never really had them. Not the way a man should. Elena married me for security. I married her because I was lonely and she was available. We were practical, not passionate. David's expression turned sad. When I met Catherine, my nurse, I felt something I'd never felt with Elena. Something real. You're here to ask for a divorce. I'm here to give you my blessing. David stood awkwardly, balancing on his good leg. Elena deserves better than what I could give her. So does Hope. If you can provide that, then I won't stand in your way. Marcus stood as well, respecting David's courage. That's generous. It's practical. David's smile was self-deprecating. I'm a crippled miner with no prospects, and a woman who actually loves me waiting in Denver. Elena has a man who carried her through a blizzard and killed to protect her. The math isn't complicated. He extended his hand. Marcus shook it, feeling the strength still in David's grip despite his injuries. I'd like to say goodbye, David said, to Elena, and meet Hope just once. Marcus nodded and led him upstairs. Elena was awake, nursing Hope by the window. She looked up when the door opened, her face going pale when she saw David. Hello, Elena. David's voice was gentle. You're looking well, considering. Elena stood carefully, holding Hope close. David, I didn't know you were coming. Chen sent word to the hospital in Denver. I took the first train. David moved into the room, his crutches thumping on the wooden floor. I wanted to see you were safe, to meet our daughter. The word "our" hung in the air. Marcus saw Elena's confusion, her uncertainty about how to respond. David solved it for her. I know she's not mine by blood. Sam told me everything, but I was going to be her father once. I'd like to at least meet her. Elena's eyes filled with tears. She crossed to David and carefully transferred Hope into his arms. David looked down at the baby, his expression complex. She's beautiful. The wonder in his voice was genuine. She has your eyes. Hope regarded David with the serious attention of the very young, as if weighing the stranger. Then she yawned, thoroughly unimpressed. David laughed, the sound surprising them all. Catherine will love hearing about this. My almost daughter judging me already. He handed Hope back to Elena, his movements careful. I'm not here to complicate your life. I just wanted you to know that I don't blame you. For anything. You survived impossible circumstances. Found someone who could protect you better than I could. Elena's voice broke. I never meant to hurt you. You didn't. David glanced at Marcus, then back to Elena. You saved yourself and Hope when I couldn't. That takes courage. I respect that. He pulled papers from his coat. Divorce papers, already signed by me. Just need your signature and it's final. Catherine and I want to marry properly, and you and Marcus should be free to do the same. Elena took the papers with shaking hands. Just like that, just like that. David's smile was sad but genuine. I spent 6 weeks in a hospital bed thinking about life and death and what really matters. What matters is that people find happiness where they can. You found it with Marcus. I found it with Catherine. No reason we can't all move forward. The signing happened right there in the boarding house room, witnessed by the young deputy Chen had sent to collect the papers. 20 minutes and one marriage was dissolved, opening the way for another. After David left, leaning heavily on his crutches, Elena sat on the bed holding Hope. That was the strangest conversation I've ever had. Her voice was wondering. He just gave us his blessing. Marcus sat beside her. He's a better man than I gave him credit for. Elena leaned against him. What happens now? Now we give testimony, make sure Victor's case is closed. Then we go home. The depositions took 3 days. Federal prosecutors grilled Marcus and Elena separately, verifying every detail of their story. Marshals rode into the mountains to recover bodies and physical evidence. Everything checked out. On the 4th day, Chen called them to her office with news. The federal prosecutor is declining to file charges. Her satisfaction was evident. Your testimony, combined with the evidence from the crime scenes, confirms self-defense. Victor Kane's operation is officially shut down. What about his other men? Marcus asked. The ones who weren't in the mountains. Most have fled. Chen consulted her notes. We've issued warrants, but expect they'll scatter to other territories. Without Victor's organization, they're just common criminals. Elena held Hope close. So it's really over. The criminal case is closed. Chen smiled. Though I suspect you will be invited back to testify when we prosecute Victor's financial crimes. Several banks want their money back. Marcus found that he could live with that. Testifying was a small price for justice. They spent one more night in Boulder, resting and resupplying for the journey home. Marcus bought proper winter gear with money from the Marshal's discretionary fund. Elena purchased cloth and needles to make clothes for Hope, who was growing fast. Sam Rivera found them at the general store, his weathered face breaking into a grin. Heard you survived. Sam clasped Marcus's good hand. Knew you would, too ornery to die in the snow. Marcus introduced Elena properly, and Sam swept his hat off in respect. Ma'am, it's an honor. Any woman who can keep up with this hard head through a mountain winter is tougher than most men I know. Elena smiled. He makes it easy. All I have to do is follow and try not to freeze. They shared dinner at the hotel restaurant, Sam filling them in on mountain news. Victor's men had indeed scattered. The trading posts were safer now, with word spreading that the territory's most dangerous criminal was dead. What about Owen Garrett? Marcus asked quietly. Any fallout from that? Sam shook his head. Army's happy to close his file. Federal marshals are happy he's not their problem anymore. Nobody's asking questions about who put him in that ice cave. Good. Marcus had wondered if the manner of Owen's death might cause complications. Better to have it closed. Sam turned serious. What are your plans? Going back to the cabin? That's the idea. Marcus glanced at Elena. Rebuild if necessary. Live quiet. You'll have neighbors checking on you. Sam smiled. I'll make sure people know you're back. Friendly people. The kind who help rather than harm. Elena reached across the table and squeezed Sam's hand. Thank you for everything. No thanks necessary. Sam's expression softened. World needs more people like you two. Raising a child right, making a life despite everything. That's hope for the future. They left Boulder at dawn, retracing their steps into the mountains. The journey that had taken 4 desperate days of fleeing now took 6 easy days of traveling. No one pursued them. No danger lurked behind every tree. Just the peaceful rhythm of walking through wilderness. Hope seemed to sense the change. She cried less, slept better, gazed at the world with increasing curiosity. Marcus found himself talking to her during the trek, explaining the mountains, the animals, the way snow formed in clouds. Elena would laugh at him. She can't understand you yet. Doesn't matter. She'll learn eventually. Marcus adjusted Hope's carrier. Might as well start the education early. The cabin appeared through the trees exactly as they'd left it. Abandoned, cold, but whole. Victor's men had searched it but hadn't burned or destroyed. The furniture Marcus had built remained. The books on his shelves waited to be read. Home. They spent the next week settling in. Marcus repaired winter damage while Elena established routines. Hope occupied the cradle Marcus had made, growing stronger daily. The isolation that had once felt like prison now felt like sanctuary. One evening, as spring began asserting itself against winter's grip, Marcus knelt before Elena with a ring he'd carved from mountain ash. Elena Morrison, soon to be Elena Webb. His voice carried everything he'd learned about vulnerability and courage. Will you marry me? Properly, with vows and promises and everything that matters. Elena's smile was sunlight breaking through clouds. Yes, to all of it, forever. They married in late May when wildflowers carpeted the meadow behind the cabin. Sam Rivera officiated, having been ordained years ago for just such occasions. Hope served as witness, sleeping peacefully in a basket at their feet. The vows were simple. Marcus promised to protect, provide, and love. Elena promised the same. No mention of obedience or traditional roles. Just two equals choosing partnership. Sam pronounced them married as the sun set behind the peaks, turning snow to gold and shadow to mystery. That night, as husband and wife for the first time, Marcus and Elena stood on their cabin porch watching stars emerge. Hope slept inside, safe and warm. Elena leaned against Marcus's chest. This is what I was supposed to find. Not the cabin I lost, but this. You, Hope. This life. Marcus wrapped his arms around her. I spent 17 years thinking I didn't deserve peace. You showed me I was wrong. We saved each other. Elena turned in his arms. That's what love does. They kissed under the stars, two people who'd fought through hell to find heaven. Years passed in the rhythm of mountain life. Hope grew from infant to toddler to young child. Marcus taught her to track animals and read weather. Elena taught her letters and numbers and the songs of her childhood. Sam visited regularly, bringing news and supplies. The mountain community, once scattered and isolated, began connecting. Families helping families, the kind of society Marcus had thought lost. Hope turned 5 in spring sunshine, running through the meadow chasing butterflies. Marcus watched from the cabin doorway, marveling at how much could change in so few years. Elena appeared beside him, her hand resting on her swollen belly. Their second child, due in summer. This one conceived in love rather than violence. This one planned and wanted. She's so much like you, Elena observed as Hope tried to catch a particularly stubborn butterfly. Determined, fearless. She has your heart. Marcus put his arm around his wife. Your kindness. Hope spotted them and ran back, her small face alight with excitement. Papa! Mama, I almost caught it! The word Papa still filled Marcus with wonder, that this child, who shared no blood with him, had chosen him as father. That love could transcend biology and violence and circumstance. He scooped Hope into his arms, spinning her until she shrieked with laughter. Maybe tomorrow you'll catch 2 butterflies, Marcus set her down, but now it's time for supper. They ate as a family, simple food made special by companionship. Hope chattered about butterflies and birds and whether snow would come back. Elena told stories while Marcus cleaned up. The domestic peace that had seemed impossible was now their daily reality. After Hope fell asleep, Marcus and Elena sat by the fire. The cabin had grown over the years. An addition for Hope's room, a larger kitchen, a workshop where Marcus crafted furniture to sell at the trading post. Elena's hand moved over her belly, feeling the baby kick. What should we name this one? Her voice was thoughtful. Marcus considered. If it's a boy, maybe Samuel. After Sam. And if it's a girl? Elena met his eyes, grace. For the grace we were given when we needed it most. Marcus kissed her forehead. Grace it is. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Marcus tensed instinctively, old reflexes never fully dormant. But when he opened it, he found David Morrison standing there with a woman beside him. David looked healthier than Marcus remembered. The crutches were gone, replaced by a cane. The woman was petite, Asian, with kind eyes and a medical bag. Surprise! David smiled. Hope you don't mind visitors. Marcus stepped back, welcoming them in. Elena rose from her chair, her pregnancy obvious. David, what brings you here? Catherine and I married last month. David gestured to the woman. We're doing a circuit of mountain settlements, offering medical care. Thought we'd stop by. Catherine extended her hand to Elena. I've heard so much about you. It's wonderful to finally meet. The evening that followed was surprisingly comfortable. David and Marcus discussed mountain life while Catherine examined Elena, pronouncing both mother and baby healthy. Hope woke briefly, confused by the visitors, But Catherine's gentle manner soon had her smiling. As night deepened and conversation flowed, Marcus realized something profound. The man whose wife he'd claimed had become a friend. The past complications had resolved into present peace. Before leaving, David pulled Marcus aside. "I need to thank you," his voice was serious, "for being the man Elena needed, for giving Hope a real father, for making it easy to move on." Marcus shook his head. "You made it easy by being reasonable. Not many men would have done what you did. We all did what was necessary." David glanced at Elena and Catherine talking by the fire. "And look what we got for it. 2 families, happy. That's victory enough." After they left, Marcus stood on the porch watching their wagon disappear into darkness. Elena joined him, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders against the cool night air. "That was unexpected." Her voice held wonder. "Good unexpected or bad?" "Good." Elena smiled. "It means we've really moved forward. The past doesn't haunt us anymore." Marcus pulled her close, mindful of her pregnant belly. No more ghosts, just future. The baby came in July, during a thunderstorm that shook the mountains. Marcus delivered his daughter the same way he'd delivered Hope 5 years earlier. With steady hands and racing heart and the absolute determination that nothing would go wrong. Grace Webb entered the world crying lustily, her small fists waving defiance at the thunder. Elena laughed through exhausted tears, holding her newest daughter while Hope peered at her sister with intense curiosity. "She's red," Hope announced, "and wrinkly. You were too." Marcus lifted Hope so she could see better. "Give her a few days." Hope considered this. "Can I teach her to catch butterflies?" "When she's bigger," Elena promised. "For now, you can help take care of her." Over the following months, the family found new rhythms. Hope proved a surprisingly capable assistant, fetching diapers and entertaining Grace with silly faces. Elena juggled 2 children with practiced ease. Marcus expanded the cabin again, building a nursery that could accommodate both girls. One autumn evening, as leaves turned gold and temperatures dropped, Marcus sat on the porch watching his family through the window. Elena was teaching Hope to read while Grace gurgled in her cradle. Ordinary domestic life, the kind he'd thought forever beyond his reach. Sam appeared from the trail leading his horse. He'd become almost family over the years, visiting monthly with supplies and news. "You look like a man at peace." Sam sat beside Marcus, both of them watching the window. "I am," Marcus admitted. "Never thought I'd say that again." "You earned it." Sam pulled out his pipe but didn't light it. "After everything you went through, everything you survived, you deserve happiness." "Does anyone deserve happiness?" Marcus asked. "Or do we just steal moments between tragedies?" Sam considered this. Maybe both. Maybe life is stealing moments and making them last as long as possible. They sat in comfortable silence, 2 men who had seen darkness and chosen light. Inside, Hope's laughter rang out, pure and joyful. "How's the territory?" Marcus asked eventually. "Peaceful." Sam finally lit his pipe. "Few roughnecks here and there, but nothing organized. Victor's death left a vacuum that nobody's tried to fill." "Good. Deputy Chen sends her regards," Sam added. "Says if you ever need anything, the marshal's office remembers what you did." Marcus nodded. He had no intention of calling in that favor, but it was good to know it existed. Hope burst onto the porch, Grace toddling behind her. The girls had Elena's eyes and Marcus's determination. A powerful combination. "Uncle Sam!" Hope launched herself at the old scout. "Did you bring stories?" "Always." Sam caught her easily. "But first, you tell me what you've learned since I was here last." Hope launched into an enthusiastic recounting of her education. Everything from letters to animal tracks. Grace contributed babbling that probably meant something in toddler language. Elena appeared in the doorway, smiling at the scene. "Dinner's ready. Sam, you're staying?" "Wouldn't miss it." Sam stood, a girl on each arm. These 2 need their uncle. They ate together, the extended family that circumstances had forged. After dinner, Sam told stories of his travels while Hope and Grace listened with rapt attention. Tales of narrow escapes and strange characters, carefully edited for young ears. Marcus watched his daughters absorb Sam's wisdom, learning about the world beyond the mountains. This was education that no school could provide, real experience from a man who'd lived it. Later, after the girls had gone to bed and Sam had retired to the barn, Marcus and Elena stood on the porch in companionable silence. Do you ever regret it? Elena asked suddenly, giving up your isolation for this chaos? Marcus thought about the question seriously. 5 years ago, he would have said solitude was safer, easier, less painful. Never. His answer was absolute. This chaos is everything I didn't know I needed. Elena leaned into him. I was so scared that night. When you found me in the snow, thought I was gonna die. You survived. Marcus kissed the top of her head. Because you're stronger than you knew. We survived, Elena corrected. Together. The word hung in the air, perfect in its simplicity. Together. Not alone, not isolated, but connected, interdependent, stronger for it. Years continued to pass. Hope grew tall and capable, helping Marcus with trap lines and learning mountain survival. Grace became the family storyteller, weaving tales that rivaled Sam's. Elena's belly swelled twice more, bringing twin boys who filled the cabin with noise and chaos. The family Marcus had thought impossible became his entire world. He'd walked into the mountains 17 years earlier to hide from pain. He'd found instead that pain was part of living, but so was joy, so was love, so was the daily miracle of watching children grow. On Hope's 10th birthday, Marcus gave her a rifle he had crafted specifically for her size. Elena might have objected, but she understood these mountains. Hope needed to know how to protect herself. This is my rifle. Hope's eyes were serious as she accepted, he said. Not anyone else's. That's right. Marcus knelt to her level. With it comes responsibility. You only aim at what you intend to shoot. You only shoot what you intend to kill. And you never, ever use it in anger. Hope nodded solemnly. I promise, Papa. The words still reached something deep in Marcus's chest. Papa. Not father by blood, but by choice. The most important kind. That evening, the whole family gathered in the meadow. Sam had come for Hope's birthday, bringing gifts and stories. David and Catherine visited with their own children. Two boys who immediately ran off to play with Hope and Grace and the twins. Marcus stood apart, watching the chaos with satisfaction. Two families born from tragedy, thriving through choice and effort. This was the future Victor Kane had tried to destroy. This gathering, these children playing in twilight, this laughter echoing off mountain walls. Elena appeared at his side, slightly out of breath from chasing the twins. What are you thinking about? Marcus pulled her close. About how far we've come. From a woman dying in snow and a man hiding from life to this. He gestured at the scene before them. Children playing, friends talking, a community built from nothing. This is what we fought for. Elena's voice was soft. This moment right here. Worth it? Marcus asked, though he knew the answer. Every second. Elena turned in his arms. Every moment of fear, every desperate choice, every impossible situation. All worth it for this. Hope called out, something about teams for a game. Grace was already organizing the other children with the authority of a natural leader. The twins protested whatever rules had been established. Normal family chaos. Marcus and Elena joined them, parents playing with children as the sun set. Sam watched from the porch, smoking his pipe and smiling. David and Catherine sat in the grass, Catherine's head on David's shoulder. When full darkness fell, they built a fire in the meadow. Hope had shot her first rabbit that afternoon, under Marcus's supervision. Now it roasted over flames while Sam told stories and the children fought sleep. Grace climbed into Marcus's lap, her small face serious. Papa, will you always be here? The question hit deeper than she knew. Marcus thought about Afghanistan, about the randomness of survival, about how close he'd come to dying in isolation. I'll be here as long as I can. His honesty was important. But even when I'm gone, you'll carry me with you. Everything I taught you, everything we shared, that stays forever. Grace considered this with the gravity of a 5-year-old philosopher. Then I'll remember everything. So you never really leave. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Exactly right. As the fire burned low and children finally succumbed to sleep, Marcus carried Grace back to the cabin. Elena had the twins, David had his boys, and Hope walked on her own, already too old for carrying. Inside, Marcus tucked Grace into bed beside her sister. The boys were already asleep in their room. The cabin that had once housed only him now held six, with room for more if needed. He stood in the doorway, watching his sleeping children, and felt the weight of it, the responsibility, the love, the fear that something might take this away. Elena's hand slipped into his. They're safe. We made sure of it. For now, Marcus couldn't quite let go of the worry. But what about tomorrow, next year? When they're grown and gone? Then we'll have done our job. Elena's voice was certain. We'll have given them the skills to survive and the love to thrive. The rest is up to them. Marcus turned to her. When did you get so wise? When I married a man who taught me that survival isn't enough, that living requires risk. Elena smiled. You showed me courage, Marcus. Now I'm showing it back to you. They retreated to their own room, the addition Marcus had built 3 years ago, a space just for them, away from the children's noise. In the darkness, holding his wife, Marcus thought about the journey that had brought them here, the impossible odds, the violence and fear, the moments when death seemed certain. All of it leading to this, peace earned through struggle, love forged in fire, a family built from ruins. Elena's breathing slowed, indicating sleep. Marcus held her a while longer, unwilling to let go of the moment. Outside, the mountains stood eternal. Inside, his family slept safe. He'd spent 17 years running from life. Now he ran toward it, embracing every moment, knowing how precious and fragile it all was. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The twins would test boundaries. Hope would push for more independence. Grace would ask impossible questions. The mountain would provide and threaten in equal measure. But tonight, everyone he loved was under one roof, safe, happy, together. Marcus closed his eyes and let himself drift, knowing that when he woke, this would all still be real. This impossible gift, this family, this life he'd never imagined but couldn't live without. In the meadow, the fire burned to embers. In the cabin, children dreamed. And on the mountain, the wind carried something new. Not the scream of a dying woman in snow, but the laughter of children who would never know that kind of desperation, who would grow strong and capable and loved. Hope, grace, and all who came after. The future Victor Kane had tried to destroy. The future Marcus and Elena had built from nothing but will and love, and the refusal to surrender. It was enough. It was everything.